Welcome everyone. In today's video, we're going to be doing the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party electoral map, basically to see which party is more favored, which party is more liked in the battleground states. We're only going to be looking at the battleground states alone. So basically, if the battleground states were the entire United States alone, how basically between the battleground states. So which party I would say holds more battleground states. So such as Nevada, the Rust Belt, the Sun Belt, Texas, Georgia, Wisconsin, just all the battleground states. So first, we're going to start off with this is not really a Joe Biden versus Donald Trump prediction. This is not really a prediction. This is more like which political party is more favored, which party is more liked among these Rust Belt states. Overall, not candidates. So, Nevada, I would say, is pretty close. Let's take a look at recent elections. In the 2020 presidential election, Joe Biden won the state of Nevada by 2.3%. In the previous election, prior to the 2020 election back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the state by around 2.4%. And then before the 2016 election, Obama won it twice. So, typically, Nevada has been voting for Democratic candidates. And that's one reason why Democrats are more, I would say, favored in Nevada. The state of Nevada favors Democrats over Republicans, and not by a lot. I still have more to say. But if you actually take a look at, recent elections, they have been voting Democrats in the past. They've been voting Democratic senators in, they've been voting Democratic governors in, and even Democratic presidential candidates. But, that's just the past. If you take a look at the future of Nevada, basically is telling us that Nevada is going to be a red state soon, and you're seeing it. Based off of recent trends, Nevada is trending to the right, but based off of recent elections, Nevada has been left. But if you're taking a look at trends, Nevada is favoring Republicans. If you're looking at recent elections, Nevada is favoring Democrats. So a little bit split, 50-50. I do have to say this is very close. It's not heavily favoring one side. That's why we're discussing this, because Nevada is pretty close. And it barely went to Joe Biden. It barely went to Hillary Clinton. So overall, it's pretty close. And I did go to Nevada, back the northern part of Nevada, so those Republican counties. The south, the bottom part of Nevada is pretty Democrat, liberal. In the Las Vegas area, that's pretty Democrat. I did go to the northern part of Nevada over the winter, mid-December, late December, somewhere around there. So not too long ago. And to be fair, though, I did go to a Republican county. I went to a very Republican county. The first thing I saw when I went to a bathroom was F Joe Biden, anti-Joe Biden graffiti. I saw Joe Biden's face on the wall, and it was crazy. The first thing I did was, because I was on a road trip, I went to Nevada, and I saw F Joe Biden, anti-Joe Biden graffiti in the bathrooms, on the walls, and just hating on Joe Biden. To be fair, that may come from just one person, and also, I was in a Republican county. Like I said, I was in the northern part of Nevada, but, that's just an example of what's to come in Nevada. Nevada is trending right, but I do have to say, as of right now, Democrats are a little bit more favored in the state of Nevada. If you're talking about margins, I would say probably about 1%. No more than that. Maybe even less than a 1 percentage point. That's how close Nevada is between which party is more favored. The Democratic Party, in my opinion, is more favored. Basically, just because they have been voting Democrats in the past 2 decades. But let's be real here. Nevada is not heavily favoring Democrats. They're barely favoring Democrats. The state is very close. Let's be real here. Half of Nevada is I would say Republicans, and the bottom half of Nevada is favoring Democrats, and it's pretty split. But if I had to choose one, I would say Democrats as of right now. But if we're looking at the future and trends, I would say Republicans are more liked in this state. But as of right now, we're taking a look at the present. The present says that Democrats are more favored, but in the future, I'm sure Republicans will be more favored in the state of Nevada. Now, Alaska is near the Canadian border, and Canada is having a crisis. Canadians have turned on their prime minister. Some people call him a dictator, whatever you want to call him. And he is obviously a liberal. The president is a liberal, and Canadians are turning on their liberal president, meaning that most Canadians, at least half of the country, based off of the trucks and the protests, hate their liberal president, meaning that Canada is becoming conservative. Obviously, their leader is not conservative, but at least half of the country is going against their liberal leader. And Alaska shares the border with Canada, I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe so. And honestly, based off of trends, Alaska has been shifting blue, but I think since it shares the border with Canada, that part of Canada, I think, is pretty conservative. I would say they don't have a Republican Party, they have a conservative party, actually. So I would say Alaska, I don't know why I keep saying Canada. Alaska favors the Republican Party. So Republicans are more liked in the state of Alaska. I would say Alaska is pretty conservative, not that much Republican. In fact, it's kind of a neoconish Republican state, I would say. Alaska favors neocons, not really. Alaska is pretty anti-Trump. I know they voted for him heavily, but if it would be, I would say Liz Cheney or Trump, they would probably barely vote Liz Cheney because it is more of a neoconish conservative state rather than a pro-Trump state. So Arizona is pretty complicated to think about because it recently just went to Joe Biden, while before it went to Joe Biden, it always went to Republicans. So what do we look here? At the most previous election or at the majority of elections? If we're basically taking a look at the majority of presidential elections in Arizona, yes, it has favored Republicans, but based off of the most previous election, Joe Biden, the Democrat, won. So it's kind of split here, 50-50, but if I had to choose one, I would say Republicans are more liked in the state of Arizona. I know opening up the border will allow illegal immigrants to come in, but I'm going to say Republicans are more liked in the state. They have a Republican governor. I know they do have a Democratic senator. It's kind of split. It is really kind of split. But, I mean, it went to McCain by 11%, Romney 7%, Trump in 2016 3%. In the most previous election, it did go to Joe Biden, but that was barely. So I would say tilt to lean margin. Maybe tilt. I'll just leave that lean. Now Texas. Texas is similar to Arizona. It's the southern state. By the way, we're starting off with the southern states, and then we'll make our way down. We'll make our way up to the Rust Belt later on in this video. So Texas, I would say, let's be real here. Let's be real. Texas is not flipping in another at least 10 more years. Texas will not flip in 2022. Greg Abbott is going to win. Texas will not flip in 2024. Whoever the Republican candidate is, I don't care. No matter who the Republican candidate is, Texas will not flip. I'm saying it right now, and I'll bet you $1 million. Texas will not flip. And I'm sticking by that. I really think Texas will not flip in 2024. And maybe not even 2028. In fact, I think Texas at least will flip in 2032. Okay? Let's be real. Texas, I think, will flip at 2032. Somewhere around there. 2032, maybe 2034. 2034 midterms or the 2032 presidential election. Somewhere around there. I don't think it will flip in 2028. I don't. Not even 2028. 2032, I think, it has a possibility of flipping. But within this decade, Texas will not flip. And I don't get why people think it will flip. It's literally a Republican state. And this is a pro-gun state. And you think these pro-gun people will vote Democrats who want to take away their guns? Heck no. Texas is very Republican. Let's be real here. So I'm gonna leave it as red. Republicans are way more liked over Democrats in the state. So Minnesota shares the border. I think it shares the border with Canada, actually. I'm not sure. But obviously, Democrats are way more favored than Republicans in the state. In fact, Republicans are fleeing ever since the BLM riots. So Minnesota has been shifting towards the left. The trends are shifting towards the left. There is no some sort of sign for Republicans in the state of Minnesota. In fact, they are fleeing the state. So yeah, Minnesota is pretty much it's pretty much blue. Let's be real. Yeah, they have a Democratic governor. They have a Democratic senator, and basically the city of Minneapolis is, these cities are pretty heavily Democrat, radical, I would say. Ever since BLM, I would say Minnesota has heavily favored Democrats. So, Florida. I think Florida Florida obviously shifted towards the right ever since the 2016 election. The 2016 presidential election was the start of the right-wing shift of Florida. So ever since the 2016 presidential election, ever since that election, Florida has only favored Republicans, and ever since 2016, Florida has only shifted to the right. And there are no signs of hope for Democrats. And if you think Florida will flip in 2022, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're thinking. So, yeah, Florida is very Republican. Let's be real here. Marco Rubio, I think, is going to win the election by 8%. Ron DeSantis probably going to win by 6%, somewhere around there. And I don't think it's going to be but yeah, Georgia, I think. Now Georgia, in my opinion, is the most hardest state to decide if Republicans are more liked in the state or Democrats are more favored in the state. Because if you would ask me, are Democrats more favored in the state of Georgia, or are Republicans more liked in the state of Georgia? That would be a very hard question to answer, because Georgia is trending to the left, and Georgia recently just elected a Democratic senator in the runoffs. They elected a Democratic presidential candidate in Joe Biden. I mean, it's favoring Democrats. But prior to the 2020 election, Georgia has been, I would say, pretty Republican. But ever since 2020, it has shown no signs of hope for Republicans. In fact, Stacey Abrams has sucked the life out of Republicans in Georgia. That's my way to put it. There is no rhythm. There is no energy in Republicans in Georgia, and I continue to stand by that. Democrats are more favored in the state. And guess what? Not by much. If you think they're heavily favored in the state, I don't know what you're thinking. It's very close, by the way. It's very close. Tilt margin. If you want to put it as a margin, definitely not more than tilt. The state of Georgia is evenly 50-50 split, in my opinion, between these two parties. You can arguably say Republicans are more liked in the state. If you count the 2020 election out, then yes, Republicans continue to win. But you can argue that. But I think 2020 election really showed strong signs for Democrats and what's to come. And it shows that Democrats are more favored in the state, but not by much. I still do think that Herschel Walker, the Republican, is going to win his Senate seat in Georgia in 2022. But it doesn't mean that Democrats, it doesn't take away my reasoning that Democrats are favored in the state. Yes, I still do have Herschel Walker, the Republican, winning in 2022. But it doesn't mean that I can't say Democrats are more favored in the state. So, North Carolina, or Republicans are more liked in the state of North Carolina. The state has slowly trended blue slightly. It's going to take longer than that, maybe in the next 4 years or so. But other than that, maybe in the next 8 years or 6 years, North Carolina will come back blue. Because the last time it went blue was when Obama was president, and Obama didn't win it twice, he only won it once. So other than that, North Carolina has pretty much favored Republicans, but maybe in the next 6 years, yes, it could flip blue. So Virginia is very interesting. It's super interesting because no one would have thought Glenn Youngkin would win, and I thought Virginia was out of reach for Republicans, and I said it so many times. I said Virginia is completely lost. Republicans would not win it in the next decade or two, and I was completely wrong. Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, took it back. I mean, we're talking about a state that was Democratic, that went to Joe Biden, 10+, that went to Hillary Clinton, 6+, and their governor won it safely before he lost to Glenn Youngkin. But, Republicans are, I would say, more liked in this state rather than Democrats. I kind of take that back, but at the same time, I don't. you can argue both sides. You can argue that Democrats are more favored in the state just because, you can also argue that just because they voted Terry McAuliffe out and Glenn Youngkin in doesn't mean Democrats are less favored than Republicans. That's true, and I kind of agree with that. But, Glenn Youngkin winning really turned me on. It really did. But it's kind of split here. It is kind of split. Because if you actually take a look at the county map in Virginia, I don't want to pull it up, it's going to take forever. But if you actually take a look at the county map yourself, you can go ahead and take a look. There was no county that shifted towards the right in the governor's race. When it was Glenn Youngkin versus Terry McAuliffe had no county that shifted towards the right. He obviously won some counties. Every single county in Virginia shifted towards the right. Not one county shifted towards the left. And that's crazy to say, and that's why I think Republicans are more liked in the state. But if you count the Glenn Youngkin versus Terry McAuliffe race out, then yes, Democrats are more favored. But that really took a turn. That really took a turn. So now we're going to start. Now we're entering the Rust Belt states. This gets interesting. So Wisconsin, I think Wisconsin is evenly 50-50 split. They barely voted for Joe Biden in 2020. They barely voted for Trump in 2016. And I think it's going to continue that way. I think Wisconsin is going to, keep going red and blue every year. It's one of those states. I know Obama won at 10+, but count that election out. Wisconsin is going to keep going back and forth between the Republican Party and Democratic Party. And the voters in Wisconsin that voted for Joe Biden were not confident with their vote. I know a lot of people that were not confident in voting for Joe Biden. They just said that because they thought Trump was divided. And if you probably would ask them now, they would say that Joe Biden is more dividing the country than Trump. And they would probably, most people that had a feeling that they shouldn't vote for Joe Biden in Wisconsin, and they did, would probably not vote for him again. So that's why I think Republicans are a little bit, slightly more liked in the state of Wisconsin, but not heavily, obviously. So now Michigan. Michigan, I think Democrats are more favored in this state. Let's be real here. Obama won it 10+. Joe Biden won it 2%. I know 10 and 2 is a big difference, but it's been going Democrats. They have a Democratic governor, which, a lot of voters have turned against her, but the state is still Democratic controlled. Let's be real here. Trump did win in 2016, but other than that, the state has been voting Democratic governors. They've been voting Democratic senators. So yeah, I mean, yeah. If you're counting this past decade, they voted for Democrats twice and Republicans only one time, and that was to Donald Trump. They voted for Obama. They voted for Joe Biden. That's two, and then they only voted for Trump once. So the state is pretty Democrat. Let's be honest. Now Pennsylvania, it doesn't mean that's out of reach for Republicans. No, I think Donald Trump can definitely win it, just like he did in 2016. But I would say if you would put it as a margin, I would say tilt to lean. I'm gonna leave it as a lean Democrat. Pennsylvania is kind of complicated. I think I would leave Pennsylvania at gray, but I want to pick one. I'm not gonna leave it gray. I'm not. So based off of Pennsylvania's recent record, they voted for Trump, and so they voted for Obama, then they voted for Trump, and then they voted for Biden. I think it's going to continue like that, just like Wisconsin. It's going to keep going red and blue every election, every other election. Red, blue, in my opinion. And if I had to pick one, I would kind of pick Democrats are slightly more favored in this state. And probably, if you're talking margins, I would probably say by less than a percentage point. That's how close I think it is. Maine. Let's just finish Maine off. Maine shares the border with Canada, if you didn't know. And Canada is at a crisis, just like I mentioned with Alaska. And I just think Republicans are more liked in the state of Maine overall. If you're talking about their districts, that's a different story. But overall, Republicans are a little bit more liked, I would say. Likely margin, if you want to talk margins. So, New Hampshire, if you're talking about previous previous elections, I would say Democrats are more favored in the state of New Hampshire, and that's a fact. They really are. Not by a lot, but yeah, they pretty much are. In this past decade, no Republican won it. In fact, in my opinion, Donald Trump, the most strongest Republican candidate that we had since Ronald Reagan, couldn't even win New Hampshire. The most strongest Republican candidate ever since Ronald Reagan still can't win New Hampshire. Trump, the most strongest Republican candidate ever since Ronald Reagan, in 2016, lost New Hampshire to, in my opinion, a weak Hillary Clinton. And if he still couldn't win it with Hillary Clinton, I don't think he'll win it in 2024. So, yeah, in my opinion, Democrats are way more favored in this state. Not by a lot, but that's what it is. So, basically, this is the map. 268 to 270. And if you're talking about just battleground states, let's see here. So, let's count all of these safe, solid Republican and Democratic states out the table. Let's remove them, put them aside. And if all the battleground states were in election themselves, this is how the map would look like. So, put all the solid states aside. If all the battleground states, let's remove Hawaii. If all the battleground states were if all the battleground states were in election themselves, then this is how it would look. So basically, this is the presidential election, I would say, with battleground states. So it's complicated. I don't know the way to put it, but it has 85 electoral votes. The Republican Party's 147 electoral votes based off of battleground states. So this is the map based off of battleground states. So Republicans, in my opinion, hold more battleground states. Republicans are favored in more battleground states than Democrats are. So here's the summary. So in the state of Nevada, the Democratic Party is more favored in this state. In the state of Alaska, Republicans are more liked in the state. Arizona, Republicans are more liked in the state. New Mexico, Colorado, Democrats are more favored in this state. And you see the map. So let me know your opinions down in the comment section below. If the battleground states alone was the presidential election itself, who do you think would win? Republican Party or the Democratic Party? I think the Republican Party would win. Let me know your opinions in the comment section down below. You should also follow me on TikTok, link down below. We're close to 200 followers on TikTok, so go ahead and follow me. Get me closer to 200. And also, if you want me to put this into an election night, the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party as an election night, let me know.